YouTube, Dawson Ryder here. This is going to be my review for Power Rangers issue 4. This was a good issue. After a little bit of fillery stuff, both Mighty Morphin and Power Rangers have had more significant issues. Mighty Morphin's was a little bit more significant just because we got some big reveals in it, but I thought this was an equally solid issue that moved the plot, just like the Mighty Morphin one did. But there obviously wasn't as many big reveals, but there was some good character stuff in it. So we pick up at Drakkon's world. That's where we arrived last time, and I'm gonna be honest, I was a little bit confused at the end of last issue when we arrived there, because I'm like, okay, did he set up a new camp there? What's going on? But we get explained that basically after Shattered Grid was undone and the emissaries fixed everything, they basically left this world as a prison world for Drakkon, and that's why it's there as is. And I just was a little bit more clarification. Maybe it was explained before and I missed it, but I was a little confused, and not only did it clear it up, but it was kind of a cool beat to go after, because it ended into some interesting character stuff. Because, like, they're walking through, they're looking for the wreckage of the Red Emissary, and Zach's asking, like, well, you know, why did you do this in the world, and whatnot, and, you know, Drakkon says, like, when I made this world, you knew nothing but clear skies and full bellies. And it was an interesting beat, where Drakkon thinks he was doing the right thing, and that he created a paradise. And there were some good bits for Drakkon in this issue, I think, good character beats, because you have that. And then later on you have Zach discovering this, like, Drakkon worshipping area where he created these, like, fake things to, you know, interact with, since he basically a bunch of Wilson Rangers, because he was, you know, on the island alone, and he ends up destroying them. But I thought it was an interesting character, I keep wanting to say episode because I'm so used to reviewing episodes, but character issue for Drakkon. You know, him going into his motivations behind Drakkon World again, and just seeing that he was, you know, psychologically further unhinged by being in this world, which further explains why he talks to the Saba necklace. It's very much a Wilson thing, in both counts, with the Rangers and the Saba thing. So I like giving character depth to Drakkon. I love sympathetic and deep villains, but just no redemption. I don't want a redemption, but I do like the gray areas, and I like the character beats in this episode. Basically, the whole issue is them kind of exploring the place, and you get to see various things like the tiger spirit we saw at the end of Shattered Grid, and there's a falcon one. I don't remember seeing the falcon in Shattered Grid. It's just been a while since I've read it, but regardless, Drakkon explains that they're essentially his jailers. Like, if that's the prison world, they're the ones that keep him in check, and they're being chased by them the whole time. And I think that's a really cool idea of them being, like, Morphing Grid guardians, and I love that they're tied to Zords from Tommy's, like, Prime Tommy's time. I think that's just kind of cool, because, like, especially from this series, you get the idea of, like, the Morphing Grid kind of transcending time and space, and the idea of these certain Zord spirits being tied to, like, all Tommy's destinies is cool. It'd probably be overkill, but it would almost be cool to see, like, a Brachio and I don't know, it'd be kind of funny to see a car spirit of Red Lightning, but it would be maybe cool to see something like that. But that would be a little bit overkill, and it makes sense that they want to use the ones that specifically tie to Mighty Morphin. But still, it's cool, and I couldn't help but think back to the end of Shattered Grid. One of my favorite panels was after they were, you know, offering Drakkon to take their hand or whatever, and Prime Tommy was walking away, and, like, behind him you could see the White Tiger in the background, which was a really cool foreshadowing of Tommy's future as the White Ranger. And then at the same time you had the Red Emissary flashing to Zeo Ranger 5, which is another bit of foreshadowing. I just really liked that, and this just reminded me of that. So while they were looking, Jason stumbles upon the wreckage of the Red Emissary, and there's another cool shot, speaking of cool shots, of him seeing, because the Emissary, like, dusted into a statue, and parts of it are mid-transition into different Ranger forms, and when he looks at it, it looks like the helmets of both MMPR Red and Omega Red, which I thought was a pretty cool visual, but he finds it in what I thought was the juice bar, but it turns out it's just a random grill. And they ultimately get it back to the ship, but there's a piece missing, and they need to figure out where to go for that missing piece, and Drakkon's like, well, I know the perfect place, but it's seedy as F. And it turns out it's Onyx, and they're even playing that game with Xanabatars or whatever, and that's really cool. I'm really excited about that, because in general, you know, this saga definitely feels distinctly its own, but at the same time it almost feels in a way like, oh, Power Rangers in space, but with MMPR Omega Rangers, which is really cool. And we know that there's going to be some sort of Astronema Dark Spectre connection, and then this just sort of furthers that whole vibe, so I think that's not only cool for the plot, but I think it's going to be neat to see the Rangers going there next week, or, you know, unless there's a filler in between, going there soon regardless. There's also some further connective moments with Drakkon and the Rangers, like I mentioned when he was, you know, showing them that fake area he made. They kind of said, like, you know, no judgment, it would probably drive you crazy to be here, and there definitely seems to be throughout not just this issue, but the series so far, they're building to some sort of connection between Trini and Drakkon, which I don't think is going to be romantic, obviously, because of the age difference. But I'm very curious where they're going with that. I also found it interesting just because, if I'm remembering correctly, way back at the beginning of the original Mighty Morphin comic, it was Trini that was the first one to sort of reach out to real Tommy, because one of the story arcs in the very beginning of the comic was that the Rangers were having a much harder time trusting Tommy when he joined the team compared to the series where it was just all kumbaya, and he was having a hard time gaining everyone's trust, and Trini was the first one to sort of bring an olive branch to him, and I think that's kind of an interesting parallel. Might be reading a little bit more into it, but I thought that was interesting for sure. I'm just not sure where they're going with it. Thinking about it though, because there's like a scene where she's like, they're like helping each other off the ground or something like that. But I was thinking, you know, outside of the Drakkon Trini thing, I don't want a Drakkon redemption arc, but I think during this time they're working together, I think it would be interesting to play with the idea, you know, or not the idea, but the dynamic of the fact that these Core 3 Rangers know regular Tommy, and just to see how they interact with him, seeing some similarities there. And same thing with Drakkon, you know, maybe recapturing a missed opportunity, because it feels like there was always some regret there. Almost, I hate to say this, but almost Kylo Ren-esque in the terms of, especially when you watch that live action trailer, there seemed to be some regret at him not choosing the Rangers, but kind of like a I can't go back situation. And again, I don't want to see a Drakkon redemption, but I think those are all interesting character beats that make having Drakkon in this comic worth it. But I thought this was a very solid issue. And this should be coming out after I've implemented my new score system, this first comic review to come out after that. So I would give this issue a 4. So that's about it for this one, guys. Until next time, to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring the bell to get notifications for my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.